Good morning, my name is Michelle McAllister, and today I'm going to be talking about our skeletal system. This is my note card. This is me on January 1st. Happy New Year. And this is the note card I'm going to be using. Nothing on the back here, so I'll set that aside. This is going to be the model I'm going to be using, and unfortunately we have some strange space, so he's got his legs kind of propped up on the desk. I will move down as we talk about those structures. We'll see if we can make this work. Okay, let's get started. Before we get into the actual bones, I want to talk a little bit about how the bones are classified by their shape. We have 7 different types of bone shapes that we're going to use for classification. The first is going to be the sutural bones that are unique for that suture pattern that you find. Those are going to be unique to the skull. We have pneumatized bones, which are bones that show those kind of air pockets. You'll find that pattern on our ethmoid bone. We have short bones that are going to be box-like. You will find those in the carpals. And long bones, such as our radius and ulna. We also have irregular bones that have a more complex shape. Those are going to be bones like our vertebrae. And we have flat bones that are going to be like that spongy bone sandwich, and you'll find that exemplified with our parietal bone. And then we have the sesamoid bones, which are flat bones, smaller bones, and the example of a sesamoid bone is going to be the kneecap. Our skeleton can be broken down into 2 divisions that we will use to discuss the bones today. The first is going to be our axial division, which is responsible for 80 of the bones in the body out of our 206. The axial division contains our skull and its associated structures, our thoracic cage, our vertebral column, and then our second division is going to be the appendicular division. So that division is going to include our pelvic and pectoral girdles and our upper and lower limbs. Our appendicular division is responsible for 126 bones in the human body. Go ahead and start our bone identification today with our axial division. That's going to start with the skull and the associated structures. There are 8 bones that are going to be found in the cranium, 14 in the face. We'll get into those in just a moment. There are also going to be 25 bones that are found in our thoracic cage, which include our sternum and our ribs right here. The ribs are going to be responsible for 24 of those bones, with the sternum being 1. And then we're going to move to our vertebral column back here, which is going to have 24 vertebrae. It's going to have 1 sacrum and 1 coccyx. In our skeleton, I'm going to go ahead and identify the 8 bones that are found in the cranial structure of the skeleton. The first is going to be the occipital bone, and I'll turn him here and see if you can see it, which is going to be found in the back. The next is going to be these parietal bones that are found on either side. There are going to be 2 of those. And then we have a frontal bone, which is exactly where it sounds, right here in the front. We have 2 temporal bones that are going to be found on the side of the head by the temples. And then we have our sphenoid and our ethmoid, which are going to be found right about in here. Bones of the face are going to be a little bit difficult to identify because we do have kind of a small structure to work with here, but it is important to note that we do have 14 bones in the face. We have our maxilla, which is going to be right up here. You can actually see that on our skeleton. We have our palatine bones, which are kind of difficult to determine on his little face. Our nasal bones, which are going to be right in here. Our inferior nasal conchae, which are 2, which are also in the nasal structure, which is hard to see on him, but that's okay. We have the zygomatic bones, our lacrimal bones, the vomer, and of course our mandible, which you can see here. It is important to note that on our skeleton, we don't have a visual for our auditory ossicles, which are found in our temporal bone, and he is missing his hyoid bone. I'd like to talk about the bones that can be found in our appendicular skeleton. This is going to include our upper and lower limbs, our pectoral girdle, and our pelvic girdle. The bones of the appendicular division are our pectoral girdle, which is going to include our clavicle and our scapula. We have 2 of each of those. Our upper limbs will include our humerus, this long bone here, our radius, our ulna, our carpal bones, our metacarpals, and our phalanges of the hands. It also includes our pelvic girdle, which is going to be our hip bones found here, our femur, this long bone here, and let me get his leg up here for our tibia, our fibula, our tarsal bones, which are much like the carpal bones in the hand, and our metatarsals on our foot, and our phalanges found here at the end. Features of our hands and feet are going to be similar in the fact that the carpal and tarsal bones are named. We also have multiple metacarpals, multiple phalanges on each hand and foot. It's going to account for a large amount of bones in the upper and lower limbs. Our tarsal bones, and I'm not sure how good of a visual you can get here on him. Ooh, he's sweating. It's going to be our talus, our calcaneus, our cuboid, our navicular, and then we have 3 cuneiform bones that are medial, intermediate, and lateral. Similar to the structure for our carpal bones, we have a proximal row and a distal row that each are made up of 4 bones. Our proximal row is going to be made up of our scaphoid, our lunate, the trochanter, and the pisiform, and our distal row is going to make up the trapezium, the trapezoid, the capitate, and the hamate, which can kind of be seen here, but he needs some more markings. So since I work in cardiology, I wanted to try to talk about a clinical application of the skeleton to our cardiology practice, which I initially found kind of difficult. One thing I do know that would be kind of cool to tie into cardiology is the fact that osteoporosis seems to have a link to heart disease. Discussing lately in our clinic how having a low bone mineral density could be tied to increased cardiac mortality. I'm not sure how the two correlate, but if that can be used as an indicator, then that would be another way that the skeleton would be able to tell us just that much more about our body. One thing I forgot to mention when I was reviewing this video, I had to add this in, is that our hip bone is composed of 3 bones. It is our ilium up here, this large part, our ischium, which is in the middle here, and then the pubis is found at the bottom. These 3 bones fuse together to create the hip bones, and I'm so sorry that I left that out, but it's in there now. And that will conclude our presentation on the skeletal system. Thank you.